It's time for Pure Performance.
Get your stopwatches ready. It's time for Pure Performance with Andy Grabner and Brian Wilson. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Pure Performance. My name is Brian Wilson, and as always, I have my fantastic co-host, Andy Grabner. Andy, how are you doing today?
I'm very good. I'm a little toothless, as you know, but
yes.
Other than that, I still have all of my strength to bite through my strength.
What are you,
bite
Samson?
through every topic. Yeah, no, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
that looked like a shark's tooth, by the way, when you showed it to me. That might have been the camera on the thing, but it looked like a really, really large tooth, which is why I was like, oh, what kind of tooth is that? But it must have just been the optics on the camera.
Yeah.
I just want to let all of our listeners know we're coming to you from the future, because right now it's 2024, but it's not really. I think this is our second to last recording of the year. So
it is.
Although you're hearing it in the future, everybody, we hope you all had a good end of year. Well, I guess we can say that, right? We can say we hope you had a good end of year because they're listening to it afterward. See, I'm answering all my own questions, Andy, by babbling and rambling. So I'm going to shut up now and let you do your magic.
I will do my magic. No, thank you so much, Brian. You're right. It was another great year.
Language.
I know. It was another great year of podcasting, and podcasting is only possible if we actually have great guests that bring new topics to our communities, to our listeners, and also to us, because we always say we are the ones that benefit the most because we listen to every episode and we learn in every episode. And today we are having a topic that is extremely popular, at least at the end of 2023, and I'm pretty sure it will also be very popular in the beginning of 2024, which is we talk about observability of LLMs, large language models. And we couldn't have picked a better guest than Nir Gazit. I hope I pronounced the name at least roughly correct. CEO and co-founder of Traceloop. Nir, do me a favor. Can you quickly introduce yourself to the audience, who you are, what you do, why you think what you do as a company is important in this day of age?
Yeah, so I'm Nir. I'm CEO of Traceloop, as you said, and we're building a platform for evaluating and monitoring the quality of LLM applications. So looking at the outputs you get from LLMs and telling you whether they're good or bad and alerting you when they're bad.
Mm-hmm. And Nir, you mentioned a good word now, because you didn't say performance, you didn't say resiliency, you didn't say some other term. You said quality of the output of LLMs, right? And that's obviously a big topic. Brian and I, we have a big background in performance testing, where you test the quality of your application under load, if it still produces the same results that you expect from a performance perspective as well. Can you define, especially for the people that just know LLMs in general, maybe they've just explored it with ChatGPT, can you define how you measure quality and what quality means in terms of LLMs?
That's a good question. I think like it's a complex answer. I don't think like there's a one-line answer for that, because if you go back to traditional machine learning models and deep networks, then you used to have like really simple definitions of like quality. You measure precision, you measure recall, so like let's say you're building a model for classifying images, whether you have cats or dogs in the image. So it's really easy when you have a model that is trained to recognize cats, just count how many cats he recognized out of pictures of cats and how many cats he recognized out of pictures of dogs. And there you get like the precision and recall, right? And then when you come to the generative AI landscape in general, by the way, not just large language models, but also for images, then the question of like good becomes really complex. If you take a really long text, and ask GPT to summarize it, what is a good summary? Even if you ask someone, is it a good summary? Is this summary better than the other one? You'll get like mixture of answers. Like some people will like this one more, some people will like this one more. So like the answer, what's the good quality text, is highly context dependent, and there's not just one answer like this is good, this is bad.
But isn't that then, I mean, that's a big challenge, right? Because if we just look at the three of us, if you say something, then Brian may think differently about what you just said than I do. How can we then automate to measure the quality or kind of validate the quality or give it a metric, like a quality indicator? How can we give a quality indicator to the output of an LLM in an automated way if we have so many different opinions, I guess? I mean, how does this work?
So what you usually do is first, there's not one, you realize that there's not one metric that can measure everything, and there's like multiple metrics, and some of them might be depending on the specific task that you're trying to score. And then secondly, most metrics won't be absolute, but rather will be like relative. So you can say, okay, this summary, if I'll go back for the like summary example, this summary is better than the other one because it contains this topic, which is part of the original text, and the other summary didn't contain that topic. And this topic is important, so it should be part of the summary. So this is like one aspect you can think of like how to compare different text summaries. But other ways would be like, I don't know, is it grammatically correct? Is it more correct, like higher language than the other one? Or is it repetitive or not? How repetitive is it? Like GPT has this tendency of being overly repetitive, and I don't know, I guess this is how it was trained. So like, how repetitive is the text that you got? And then so you get like these 10, 20 sets of metrics, and this is how you can compare text X against text Y. And then, if you see something weird, something jumps, with the metrics, then you know that something is wrong.
You suddenly have a lot of power in your hands if you think about that, right? Because let's just take even the grammar side of it. Obviously, you have grammar rules, but if you look at things written in proper grammar, a lot of times they may be harder for the regular people to read, or it's not quite the way regular people might read or write these days. So number one, you have to think, is this topic good for proper grammar? Because if it was like maybe a bunch of teens or whatever, and I know I'm an old man talking about teens, right? But if it was a bunch of teenagers or something, you might not be doing the absolute perfect grammar because they'd be like, this is boring to read. Or if you think about even like 18th century British literature with all its like crazy language, and it's just a horrible, horrible read. But at the same time, if you're enforcing some of those things, you're also guiding culture into a way of, are we going to go more and more casual, or are we going to try to push more and more? I don't know. Just that statement you were saying just like opened up the choices you make and the outputs, not just you, but whoever's working on all these things, and the outputs that get introduced to everybody is going to start influencing culture in some way, right? The more and more these things are being used, and maybe I'm overblowing it a little, but it just dawned on me like, yeah, this has to be done, and you're all picking what that best is going to be. So that's kind of cool. I don't know if you thought about it in that way yet, but maybe you're going to be changing. People are going to start using more words and more variation or whatever, right? You could go either way with that.
Nero, let me ask you a question on this, because I took a couple of notes, and you said, and the quality can be measured by, for instance, is it grammatically correct? Is it repetitive? Is it too repetitive? Is it accurate? Does it contain certain keywords? But does this mean, for grammar, I guess you can take the output and then automatically validate if it's grammatically correct, because we have tools that can check this. Repetitiveness, you can also measure it, right? How often does a certain word repeat? Now, accuracy is, I guess, hard, because how do you measure the accuracy? Because you need somebody that actually knows the subject matter and what you expect. And then also the other one, does it contain certain keywords? This also means you need to have a domain expert that says, hey, this needs to be in there. So my question to you is, what of these aspects from quality can be quantified and measured automatically? And where do we still potentially need a human being?
I think if you look, I was about to say that if you look at the content, then you probably need some human being, at least to create some guardrails, to define the rules that the output text needs to comply with. But even if you just look at the structure, we were talking about an AI that generates like complete content. I don't know, you use AI to write an email. But there's a lot of use cases where you use AI to, let's say, extract some specific, subjects or specific words from a really long text, or you use AI to classify a really long text. And then the output is really strict. Like you expect the output to be just one word. And then, the whole word of what's a good answer, what's a bad answer becomes completely different. But even for like, if we go back to like the text examples, then it still holds that you need a lot of guidance from humans, from probably the developers or data scientists working on the project, to tell you what do they expect the text to be or to contain. Even for the grammar, I don't know. Brian, you talked about like us, guiding higher or lower grammar according to the metric that we define, but actually the person developing the application and using us, for example, as a monitoring tool, will be the one that actually defines whether they want a good grammatical, like a high grammatically text or lower one. Like for example, if I'm writing some contract, then probably the language will have to be super
legalese and
legally high words, And if I'm writing a Reddit post, then I want to lower it down. I want to make it dumber and not dumber, but like simpler to understand.
You just offended the whole Reddit community. Thank you so much for that.
We're going to get emails on this now, Andy.
Yeah, probably. So okay, because you said, coming back to what you do actually, and what motivates you and what drove you to, I guess, start Traceloop. That means you actually provide a framework, a tool that allows developers that are integrating LLMs into their applications to really measure the quality of the LLMs that they're using. Is this accurate? An accurate definition, description of what you guys do?
Yeah, the first thing we did, we wanted to measure the quality of the outputs. So we need to start collecting those outputs and start collecting how our customers, our users are using LLMs. So we needed to build an SDK that can collect these metrics. And so we have a lot of experience with OpenTelemetry. So it made total sense to just, use the same foundation, the same protocol, and extend it to support instrumenting calls to OpenAI, calls to vector databases, and even frameworks like LangChain and LlamaIndex and others.
So that means what you are providing is some instrumentation for these, handful of SDKs that I would use as a developer to develop against an LLM. You mentioned OpenAI. Then I can just say, I want to enable your tool, and then I automatically get OpenTelemetry, I guess, traces, metrics. What type of data do you expose? What type of signals of observability? Is it metrics, traces, or logs as well?
So right now it's just traces. This is the first thing we did. We want to start sending metrics as well in the next month or two. And then also logs. We basically want to cover everything that's in the OpenTelemetry standard.
And do you see, so when I'm a developer and I want to integrate an LLM, where and when is the right time to actually look at the quality? Is this part of my testing kind of process, or is this something that I need to do in production, because I can only truly validate the LLM when it's under real load and real users are using it? Or do you see more people using it up front in their test environment?
So we were surprised. We thought that people would want to use it once they're getting closer to production. So they want to start monitoring and running it in scale and then looking, at outputs. But we were actually surprised to see many users using it really early on. This is one of the first tools that they adopt, just installing we haven't talked about the name of the tool, which is OpenLLMetry, the open source. So this is one of the first things that they install, because it's just you install the SDK and that's it. You automatically figures out the calls you made to OpenAI and monkey patches everything on Python or on TypeScript. And then you just get logs of all the prompts and everything. And so, for example, we've seen users using LlamaIndex, which people use it, for example, for building RAG pipelines, where you have a vector database, you get some prompt, and then you send it to OpenAI to get to get a response based on the data you got from the vector database. And so we've seen users just want to see the prompts and responses that Llama Index builds for them behind the scenes, because they can't see it in the code. So they just, during development, they want to see the prompts, they want to see the responses, they want to understand why the model is behaving like it behaves. So, just installing OpenLLMetry and getting these traces gives them a lot of, visibility into what's happening in their own program.
Brian, this kind of reminds me a little bit of, if you remember the days when we talked about Hibernate and other mapping tools, like frameworks, where there's always a black box, right? I mean, it magically works, or it magically worked, those entity relationship mappers, like Hibernate. And then we all of a sudden started to get distributed traces, and we saw what is Hibernate actually doing when you are requesting a certain type of data, and then you saw, wow, this is really inefficient. It's collecting too much data, making too many round trips. And I guess this is the same what you're saying. We are dealing now with a new technology. We are dealing with SDKs that we can make a call to, and we get something back, but we don't really know what's happening inside. And with OpenLLMetry, did I pronounce it correctly? OpenLLMetry. It's a tongue breaker. You actually get the visibility in what's happening inside the model or inside that SDK. And with this, developers can better understand that technology and then hopefully also better use it. Is this a good assumption of what people are doing?
Yeah, exactly. Like during development, just seeing what's happening and being able to debug it. And then later on, once it reaches production, being able to ongoingly monitor the quality of how your users are using your, already built application.
It's funny when you described you described it that way. I think for a lot of people, all of this AI stuff, especially, the ChatGPTs, seems like this magical, mysterious thing that, sometimes when we're even talking to coworkers and we all work in IT, they're like, oh, it's just amazing. It just does this crazy stuff. But behind it is really just all code, traces, same thing as everything else, right? And getting that visibility into it just yanks that curtain down, right? Because suddenly if you're looking at that and I'm seeing how it's being interacted with, it's no longer this, the Terminator's coming or whatever. It's just code operating, right? Advanced code, right? But it's pulling the mystery out of it, which I think is good, because a lot of people are probably spooked in either way, either really into it or really scared of it. And all, it's like, no, it's just code. And I'm sure Andy will find an N+1 problem in there at some point. Well, when he was talking about Hibernate, one of the most, it was interesting, we saw from database to serverless, not serverless, but to microservice, like N+1 is like one of the most common problems. And we're sure it'll hit there at some point. So it'll be a common problem in that.
Nir, I have a question, and this might be very basic, but I assume many of our listeners have the same misunderstanding or not knowing. When I am an application developer and I want to use an LLM, let's say I want to provide a more easier natural language interface to my software, right? So I guess I have two options. I can develop against a public available SaaS hosted version, like, I don't know, I think Microsoft provides OpenAI or something, right? And then I assume I can also host my own model and train my own model. These are my two options, right, that I have.
Yeah.
So what type of visibility or observability do I get with OpenLLMetry? I really need to practice pronouncing it. What type
Maybe
of visibility?
Maybe we need to change the name. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah, it's like you can get people on stage and the one that can say it the best or 10 times in a row without messing up.
Becomes a drinking game. Yeah,
becomes a drinking game. Exactly.
Can you say it right? Awesome. Every time you say it wrong, you got to take a drink. That's viral marketing there. Then
Yeah. So my question is, how much do I learn as a developer from the internals of the LLM I'm calling when I'm developing against a SaaS offering versus something where I host the model myself?
So if you just use a model as an API, then you'll get the same things. Like basically the observability you get when looking at calls to a model like OpenAI or your own self-hosted model is you can see the call, you can see the response, you can see the token usage, but you can't really see, what's happening, I don't know, within the model. So of course, with OpenAI, we have no idea, how GPT-4 even was the architecture GPT-4 was built. But for open source model, we do have some of these insights, but getting that extra bit of visibility, looking at what's happening within the model, I think it probably won't make sense to most people, maybe like even all, because it's kind of like the magic, of the model that was trained. The model learned some understanding of text, and this is how it was able to generate text. But we have no idea, what you look at the neural network, like what each layer is doing, what is the role of each layer in that like huge model with billions of parameters. I've seen works, with like old models doing like image recognition, and it was really cool to see, if you look at the neural network, then you can actually see like each layer, like the kind of understanding different aspects of the image. Like if you train a model to recognize dogs, then you have like one layer that is really good at recognizing eyes, or one layer that's really good at recognizing ears or something, and then together they're able to distinguish whether a picture is a picture of a dog or not a picture of a dog. So I'm guessing you'll have something similar like that if you look at an LLM. But for most users, who cares? Like it works or it doesn't.
Yeah. Expanding the topic a little bit from the quality metrics we talked about earlier, because Brian and I, while we have a history and done a lot of work around performance engineering. So performance for me is obviously one dimension of quality. So how fast a system is responding, because if I ask a question and it takes a minute until I get something back, then the question is the system really helping me in my workflow, right? I'm like, do I get more efficient? Yes or no? Or would I have been faster? Do you, is this a dimension you're also looking into, performance, like how fast responses are coming back?
Yeah, I think this is one of the reasons why we started with tracing, because if you look at a trace of, let's say like a RAG pipeline where you have like a call to a vector database and you have maybe even multiple calls to OpenAI, then looking at the latency, for example, of each call to OpenAI can tell you a lot about maybe even what can you optimize. You can see that you're doing things sequentially, but you can parallelize, like you can do these 3 calls in parallel and then save a lot of time, because each call to OpenAI can take like 3 to 4 seconds even. So it's like, if you're coming from like a traditional cloud and microservice environment, 3 seconds is like forever. I don't know.
Yeah. Why would you? Can you give me an example? Why would I have? Because I guess I have a very simplistic view of what an LLM can do for me. I can say, hey, ChatGPT, create an abstract for this podcast, and here's some input, right? And I put it in, I hit enter, and then I assume from my naive way of looking at it, there's this one API call, and then one result comes back. Now, you just mentioned that, there might be multiple calls to OpenAI. Why would that be? Give me some use cases where you would actually then split up the work.
So the simplest use case is one limitation that we have of the technology today, which is token limitation. We can't, there's a limit on the amount of text we can input into OpenAI. So if you have like a really long text we want to summarize, sometimes we just need to split it into multiple shorter text, summarize each chunk, and then take all the summarization and create one summary from all of them. So this is like, the first part can be parallelized, right? And then the last part needs to just collect all the summaries and build a summary of the summaries from them.
And I think in that model, you just, at least to me, highlighted where the quality comes in, right? Because if you think about chunking up a bit of text, if text part 3 has some reference that only makes sense in context of text part 1, but those two are analyzed separately, you don't have that context connection. So that then is the challenge of how do we take those 3 and when you talk about the quality of the output, right? You're going to get an output. You can get it speedily. I think the fascinating thing on this, it's, most of the times in checking quality, is the answer accurate? And accurate meaning accurate. It's 2 + 2 is 4, and it's not spitting out 5. Search engine searching, that started becoming qualitative. Sorry. This is that on much bigger scale. And then when you talk about those having to tokenize or, break up that data, much more complex. You're almost going to need an AI or like a quantum computing at some point to handle all this, right? I mean, it's really, really fascinating performance and quality issues that, again, and this is why we love doing this podcast, right? Because all these new topics that we haven't thought, like my mind is just like going all over the place right now, which is probably why I've been messing up so much during the episode. Anyhow, back to you, Andy.
Yeah. So is there near, and again, we're coming, at least I'm coming from a very basic understanding of the whole new technology. When we talk about performance, is there an option when I use an LLM that I can say, hey, I rather have better performance but less accuracy? So can I make a call to one of these LLMs and say, you know what, I need the response within a second, but I don't care so much about the quality? Is there a trade? Is there something that I can decide as a developer?
Yeah, definitely. You'll have like faster models than like, if you go back to OpenAI, then GPT 3.5 will be, I think maybe now it's less correct, but until 2 months ago, GPT 3.5 was much faster than GPT 4. But it's less accurate, but it depends like how you measure accuracy. So there might be some use cases where you want to use GPT 3.5 because it's faster, and by the way, it's cheaper rather than GPT 4. But you still need a way to figure out if it's okay for you to use it. Like, what do you lose by downgrading to GPT 3.5? And for that, you need some metrics that you can actually compare and see, okay, this is what I'm losing. Like the redundancy increases or the grammaticality decreases. I don't know why, but something changes, and you need to be able to make this, like, make a conscious decision around it.
One thing that I recently learned, this was just a podcast we published in mid of December, where I was on the road in Hungary. I was speaking at a conference, and then I met a guy from a bank, and they're obviously also integrating LLMs into their online banking. And it was really interesting for me to learn that the Hungarian language is very limited in terms of material that's available, because there's only, I think, so many, like 10 million or 12 million Hungarians in the world producing that much content that can be used to train models, and therefore the language models that are existing are actually not that great right now, and that's why there's an initiative going on from the individual banks and other industries, I think, to build their own models. So my question to you is do you see that this is something is this something you see also with your customers, that they're struggling just with the limits because they don't have enough material available to train the model, and therefore you're getting a lot of bad results, and therefore the decision to go into production with an LLM integration means you just need to feed it with more data?
That's a good question. I actually speak a bit of Hungarian, so I can tell it's a really difficult language, and I can see why GPT has difficulties understanding the Hungarian. But I've seen users use GPT, for example, with Japanese or Dutch, which are languages that I was surprised to see it, being able to answer questions in these languages. The problem is that, we were talking about how hard it is and how difficult and how much we don't know about how to measure the quality of text in English. So in other languages, we're in much worse position. Probably there hasn't been done, much research around how to score a Hungarian text. Even if you just want to see if it's grammatically correct, which is a really simple task. I'm not sure how many researchers there are out there doing that. So I would have to say this will become a much bigger challenge, and we'll see like a huge gap between the tools that we have in the English language as opposed to other languages. Like we just won't have the same quality of tools as we have even today with the English language.
Yeah, it's interesting. There was a lot of talk about cultural bias in facial recognition and things like that, and this is bringing this up, right? Depending on what language you speak, or it's and how popular that language is. Are people and cultures going to be left behind on this, right? Is the technology going to be reachable by them? Now, it just always fascinates me what doors or questions these things all open up, right? Because we think about these things in terms of our own situation, but then that Hungarian thing, or I'm thinking like, okay, what if it was like Swahili, right? What are you going to do for a Swahili language model? It's going to be even tinier, right? But yeah, just interesting challenges. And one thing I think we can rely on, hopefully, as opposed to with the facial recognition thing, but I think what a lot of stuff goes on is in IT and all this is there's such a great community of people sharing that hopefully we see that that spirit, break through all that and.
But the problem is cost. I thought about like I can compare it to Wikipedia, for example. Like the English Wikipedia is the largest one for sure, but today you have other languages that have like a really big Wikipedia communities, and it's easy to get started because you just need people who want to contribute and speak that language that can start writing, articles. But when it comes to training like an LLM, you first need a lot of money because it's really expensive to train an LLM for a specific language. And secondly, you need expertise. And I'm not sure that every country would have the expertise of like training its own LLM. So you might have a lot of languages where no one knows how to even like train an LLM for that specific language.
Mm-hmm. Can you give me, besides the, let's say, common use case, I'm asking GPT to summarize the text for me or create something. What are other use cases you have seen that your customers are implementing? Why? Can you give me one or two examples? Because I just want to understand more than just, summarize some text for me. What else is out there?
I think the most exciting use cases I'm starting to see today is the multimodal use cases. With Gemini from Google and now and GPT-4 as well, GPT-4 Vision, you starting to get models that cannot just take text and try to understand it. You can also feed images to the model, and then it can kind of communicate with that image, like understand that image and answer questions about that image. So you're starting to see like you have customers like coming from a medical background using like images to try to understand, patients and medical conditions. And this is like, I think this will be an amazing, a great advancement that we'll see in 2024, because we'll soon have, audio coming into these language models, and they will have a lot of like this multi-dimensionality will give us a huge, amount of new opportunities and applications we can build. And this is like, I would say this is the most interesting and most exciting things I'm seeing users are doing today in our platform.
And you called this again multimodal LLMs, or what did you call them?
Multidimensional, multimodal, yeah.
Multidimensional, yeah, cool. So, Brian, if this becomes a reality, then people can say, there's a new podcast for Brian and Andy, but it's an hour long, and I don't like all the jokes. So please give me a 1 minute summary, because then, you can understand audio. And it's really awesome, actually. And then draw a picture, so then we don't need to take the screenshots anymore. We can actually ask the large language model to create a perfect picture of our discussion based on just the audio track.
I'll be drawn as a clown, I'm sure. You brought up an interesting thing there. Going back to the idea of having trade-offs between speed and accuracy, the different versions, right? So that first thought that brings to mind is shopping around and picking which model you want to use for what purposes, right? And that I just think of, Mario Kart, the old, the Nintendo game where you can get more speed, but that makes you slower to accelerate. There's all these trade-offs. But then I'm thinking, and I don't know if this is something you're seeing, is LLMs talking to other LLMs. So maybe one is optimized for grammar. Another one is optimized for whatever. Like, let's say you had the picture one is going to analyze the picture and do all this stuff. And instead of training that model then to also write a fantastic summary, do you see this thing where we're taking data from one, sending it to another one that's more specialized? Or let me boil it down to even a more specific question. Do you think we're going to be seeing specialized models, or is everybody going to be trying to do everything all at once together in their own model?
I think this is a really good question, that because I've been thinking about it a lot. And if you see like how the industry evolved in the last year, everything was so fast. But when OpenAI started, they used to have a model specific for chat, and they had another model for tasks, and they had another model for code understanding. And now they don't. Now they have one model which is general purpose. You can do everything, and that's it. And it's a question. And I even read once, I think it was like a year ago, that they're actually, when they deprecated, their code understanding, the model that can understand code, they said that when they measure that, they saw that their newer, like GPT 3.5 back then, it's better than it's general purpose. So it wasn't trained specifically on code, but it was better at code understanding and text understanding than the model that was trained just on code and was supposedly better on just code understanding. So, and then they even said that training, because let me go back. They used to train one model only on code from GitHub, and then another model only on text, like from Wikipedia and Reddit. So this one model was fluent in text understanding and text generation, and another was code understanding, code generation. And when they took the text generating model and trained it on code, they saw that it was actually becoming better at text understanding, which is weird. Like, it ran out of code, and then it suddenly became more proficient and more fluent in like code and like text understanding and text generation. It's kind of weird. They're not sure that anyone knows why this happens, but this is what they saw. So I would say that my guess is that we will actually have like more generic models that can do everything, rather than models specific for specific kind of tasks. But on the other hand, we still see some models being better at some like highly specific use cases than others. For example, I've seen a claim where Anthropic models are more creative than OpenAI. So if you want to, you want to write a poem, maybe you should do it with Anthropic and not with GPT.
Interesting. So much to see how it all plays out over time, right? So,
yeah. It's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, as you said, you're right. We're only a year in, or
yeah, GPT 3.3 was like a year ago.
Yeah, it's crazy, and that has completely changed our world. It obviously has. We are in our organization, right at Dynatrace, we're also using LLMs now to provide, on the one side, natural language interface to the data that we have, right? Asking human questions, like regular questions, and then get the queries. Also to help our users to do certain tasks in the tool, or just like get help on how to do certain things. And one of the things we're also doing, and I'm sure everybody's doing this, but we are redesigning or optimizing also our documentation, everything that is available public, to be easier consumed by LLMs, right? Because LLMs are obviously, scratching or scraping websites and then using this to train the model. So I guess if you are optimizing the data that you put out there, then it's going to be easier for large language models also to produce a good quality value and answers out of it. Yeah.
That's funny. Wow. That reminds me of like the whole, optimizing for Google and how everyone would try to cheat it by putting the metadata And are people going to start trying to cheat on the? I'm not saying we're cheating, obviously, but like this taking advantage of putting certain words in it to trick the AI models. That's
yeah.
I would say one of the things that like I'm always thinking about, and like this reminds me of that is I think we haven't quite figured out what's the right interface for interacting with these LLMs. Like right now we have two types of interfaces. One is the chat interface that is widely common, and the other one is like the Copilot interface. And these are the two that kind of succeeding. Like I personally more of a fan of like the Copilot because I don't need to do any, like it just integrates with my day-to-day work. I don't need to do anything and it just works, and it's kind of like a magic. And it's interesting to see what will happen there, like what types of interfaces will we see in this domain, in the next year or so. Because this is like still an open question in my opinion.
Yeah. Nero, because we are kind of getting closer to the end of the recording here, I wanted to kind of loop back to Traceloop, which is the company that you founded. I know you mentioned earlier OpenLLMetry. See, I got it right this time, hopefully. So that's an open source framework. And what is Traceloop then? Can you just quickly fill me in, and also the listeners?
Yeah, so the open source OpenLLMetry is basically an SDK built on top of OpenTelemetry that allows you to log traces and soon metrics and logs using OpenTelemetry, which you can then connect to any observability platform that supports OpenTelemetry. And then Traceloop is one of the potential consumers of this SDK. So if you connect the SDK, if you route the SDK to Traceloop, then you get metrics around metrics and alerts around specifically the quality of your LLM outputs and generated content. And this is the platform. Basically, the input is OpenTelemetry, which coming from our SDK.
Cool. And so if people are listening to this and it's like, wow, okay, we also have a project where I know we're trying to integrate LLMs with our applications. You said the first thing that people typically do is download OpenLLMetry to make sure that they get the telemetry data, then send it to your observability backend. This might be Traceloop or might be any other observability endpoint or backend. Do you know what are kind of like the 2-3 things that people are when they use your framework? That the 3 things that we want to give them, that we want to tell them, hey, this is something you need to do. This is something you will probably find. These are some mistakes that you should not make. Just like maybe as a good starting point for people that get started now after this podcast.
I think that the most important thing is to work methodologically with LLMs. Most people, before they start using our platform, do everything manually. They look at the outputs that they're getting, and then they decide whether they like it or not. And when they make changes, like when they upgrade a model, when they change a prompt, or when they make their pipeline more complex, the way that they quantify how, like, if they've gotten better or not is just by looking again at the outputs and seeing, okay, this looks good. Like this looks like a good summary, for example. So I would say start measuring the quality from day one. Like start define your metrics, define the metrics according to the application that you're using, and of course, like potentially do it with Traceloop, and then measure it all the time. And when you make changes, measure the metrics, and then see that those metrics that you've chosen have actually improved. Don't just look at the text with your bare eyes and decide whether like this is what you want or not. You have to work more quantifiably, like from day one.
It's funny. That's the same CD model, right? I mean, like always testing. Write your code, check it. My database query went from 1 to 5 queries. Do I want that? Right? It's now you're just putting that quality in there. Yeah. Sorry, I said delivery. I'm an idiot. I'm off today. Something's wrong with me today, Andy. I think I'm dying.
Maybe your model is wrong. Maybe you have some issues with your model. Maybe this is who knows? Maybe we're not talking with Brian Wilson. Maybe we're talking with a model that was trained on only a subset of all of the podcasts that you've ever created, and that's why you're off.
But the jokes are spot on bad, so I at least got that right.
Exactly.
And Nir, I don't know if we don't have a time for this topic today, but I wanted to bring it up in case either you know about this stuff, it might be a topic for a future conversation, or if you know somebody who might be, or also for our listeners. It got me thinking, obviously there's a rush to get all this stuff out to the market, right? Faster you are on this. And we know with speed comes sacrifices. And one of the things that you said earlier about, training on code and different things, I just started thinking of security in this stuff, right? Like, could people feed in a prompt to chat which would break it, right? Or you just like SQL injection in a search. But are there any different kind of considerations when it comes to security in these things? Is the industry around these places integrating security? Like, we don't see a widespread integration of security, but it's starting to catch on. Are they picking up? What are the special considerations? And are they just wild, wild west and going in hoping nobody starts to exploit? So I think that's a whole other topic, but I don't know if you know people or if that's something that you're aware of.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge topic. And I think this is, again, something we'll need to deal with like in the next coming month. It's kind of relates to privacy, like privacy and security. Mm-hmm. How do you make sure not to leak your own data to someone, like by accident, or even someone trying to hack into your prompts and like trying to extract internal data that you didn't want to be exposed. And yeah, I think there's a lot to be discovered there. And if you take like traditional like cybersecurity, then we'll probably see hacks first and then solutions, and not the other way around.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Awesome.
Nir, thank you so much for enlightening us, for telling us about what LLMs really are and do, and like giving us a little more use cases other than just give me a summary of a podcast, which I sometimes try to use ChatGPT for. I'm really also, like you, excited about the multimodal or multidimensional, where audio, image, and text can be analyzed, and then opening up new help for the medical field, for instance, which you mentioned. I also like the quality metrics, like how you can measure. There's multiple dimensions to measure the quality, accuracy, repetitiveness, also obviously performance, costs, and then your tips in the end about start to measure from day one, and then continuously validate the quality metrics, because every change that you do to your model, to your prompts, may have an impact on costs, performance, or on the output, on the correctness of what's coming out. So that's really nice. Yeah, and folks, obviously, Traceloop and OpenLLmetry is what you should do and check out. We will link to these. You sent me a couple links. Any final thoughts? Anything else that I missed?
Well, I would like to hear Nir say OpenLLmetry, because I heard it a different way. So let's hear it from the source. How do you say it?
I say OpenLLmetry. You hear the M, because it sounds like OpenTelemetry, but OpenLLM.
Yes.
But it sounds like you have 3 L's in there. OpenLLmetry.
Yeah.
OpenLLmetry. Yeah.
LLMetry. Yeah, it's awesome.
I like that. Yeah, the other thing too is, oftentimes we have new topics on, and they often quickly become my favorite. This is quickly becoming one of my favorite topics now. But just even from the simple aspect that we started with, which was testing for quality of subjective data, right? But doing that programmatically, it's mind-boggling on its own, and then pulling in the trade-off of quality versus performance, at least for now, right? That might change in the future, obviously, with things getting better. It's just opening all sorts of, thoughts and ideas in my mind again. And again, this is why we love doing these podcasts. We love having guests on like you, so can't thank you enough. If you have it on top of your mind, if not, what's the biggest thing you expect to see coming out of this field in this new year? Or you're hoping to see come out of this field in this new year?
the Gemini models. Like we see in the Gemini Pro and then the Gemini Max, it should be out sometime in the future. I think like it's going to be an exciting year looking at how these models evolve. Just a year, we now have GPT-4 and Gemini, who knows what we'll have in December 2024.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. We hope you all found this as fascinating as we did. And thank you once again, Nir, for coming on. And Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you
very much.